The steady hum of the cargo ship's engines filled the bridge as Tom checked the sensors one more time. The cargo run to the outer rim colonies was supposed to be routine, but space had its own way of surprising even the most experienced crews. A blinking light caught his attention. Something large was drifting in their path. "Mike, come look at this," Tom called to his navigator. The object was clearly artificial, its metallic surface reflecting the distant starlight. As they drew closer, the ship's scans revealed it to be a vessel of unknown design, completely powered down and rotating slowly in the void. "Never seen anything like it," Mike muttered, adjusting the view screen's magnification. The vessel's architecture was alien, with smooth curves that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No response to hails, no power signatures. But wait, there's a faint life support reading from one of the compartments. Protocol dictated they should call it in and wait for authorities, but the life support reading changed everything. If someone was alive in there, they couldn't wait. Tom made the call. "Suit up. We're going in." The boarding team consisted of Tom, Mike, and Anna, their medical officer. Their magnetic boots clanked against the alien ship's hull as they made their way to what appeared to be an airlock. The emergency override took longer than usual with the unfamiliar technology, but Anna's steady hands made quick work of it. Inside, their helmet lights revealed corridors designed for beings slightly taller than humans. The air was breathable but thin, and the artificial gravity was set lower than Earth standard. Everything was built to accommodate creatures that moved with more grace than humans could manage. They followed the life support readings to a sealed chamber near the center of the ship. The door's control panel still had power, a backup system dedicated to this room alone. Whatever was inside, the ship's original crew had prioritized its preservation. "It's a nursery," Anna whispered as the door slid open. The chamber was filled with what looked like transparent pods, each maintained at a precise temperature and humidity level. Inside each pod, curled up in positions that reminded Tom of sleeping cats, were alien cubs. They were beautiful creatures, covered in fur that seemed to shift colors even in the dim light. Their faces were vaguely feline, with large closed eyes and delicate pointed ears. Each cub was about the size of a human toddler, and they slept peacefully, unaware of their ship's condition. "Look at their eyes," Anna pointed out, examining the medical readouts on her scanner. "The structure suggests they're nocturnal, probably evolved from night hunters." She reached out to touch one of the pods, and the cub inside shifted slightly, responding to her warmth. The team was so focused on the cubs that they almost missed the arrival of the rescue ship. The massive vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel right next to the derelict, its design similar but clearly more advanced. First contact protocols kicked in automatically, with both ships' computers establishing basic communication. The alien response was immediate and panicked. Their first message, translated roughly by the computer, contained terms that meant "day predator" and "stay away." They were terrified, not of human technology or weapons, but of what humans were, creatures that hunted in daylight. Tom tried to explain that they were only trying to help, that the cubs were safe. The aliens didn't seem to understand how a day-active species could be trusted with young ones. In their experience, day hunters were to be feared and avoided at all costs. Everything changed when they saw the video feed from the nursery. Anna had stayed behind with the cubs, and the camera showed her checking each pod carefully, adjusting environmental controls, and speaking softly to the sleeping infants. Her actions, so natural to humans, seemed to confound the alien observers. When the alien ship docked and the adult nightfolk finally entered their derelict vessel, they found something that challenged their entire worldview. The human team had not only protected their cubs, but had also repaired the nursery's failing backup systems. The cubs were safe, healthy, and completely undisturbed. The nightfolk captain, a tall figure whose fur rippled with patterns of confusion and reluctant gratitude, approached Tom. Through the translator, he spoke words that would later be remembered as the beginning of a profound change in interstellar relations. "Perhaps we were wrong about day hunters. You protect, just as we do. 2 weeks after the rescue, the human cargo ship crew found themselves invited to the Nightfolk's nearest space station. The massive structure was built to accommodate both day and night cycles, with special shielding that could simulate darkness at any time. Tom and his crew couldn't help but notice how the Nightfolk workers flinched every time they walked past. "They still think we're going to eat them," Mike whispered to Anna as they followed their guide, a Nightfolk named Shade, through the dimly lit corridors. The station's lighting was kept low to accommodate their host's sensitive eyes, and the humans had to rely on guide lights along the floor to avoid bumping into things. Shade led them to what appeared to be a community gathering space. The room was filled with Nightfolk of various ages, their fur rippling with colors that reflected their emotions. Most displayed patterns of anxiety and curiosity. Several cubs from the rescued nursery pod were there too, now awake and active, their fur shimmering with bright patterns of excitement. One of the cubs, braver than the rest, broke away from its group and approached Anna. The adults gasped, their fur flashing morning colors, but they held back, watching intently. The cub reached out and touched Anna's hand, fascinated by her lack of fur and her warm skin. "They're not supposed to be awake during the day cycle," Shade explained, his own fur showing patterns of amazement. "But since meeting your kind, they've been curious about the light hours. It's unprecedented." More cubs began to approach the humans, their natural caution overcome by curiosity. The adult Nightfolk watched in stunned silence as their young ones freely interacted with what they had always considered dangerous predators. The cubs seemed especially fascinated by Tom's beard, trying to make their fur mimic its pattern. The station's lead researcher, Dawn, approached the group with measuring devices. "Your heat signatures," she said through the translator. "They're similar to our ancient day hunters, but your behavior, it makes no sense to us. Day hunters in our history were always solitary, aggressive. You are social, protective." Anna knelt down to be at eye level with the cubs, her medical training kicking in as she noticed their slight squinting. She pulled out some spare protective goggles from her medical kit and helped the curious cubs try them on. The simple act of considering their comfort seemed to astonish the watching adults. "On Earth," Anna explained while adjusting the goggles for a particularly excited cub, "humans evolved to be active in daylight because it gave us an advantage. But we stayed in groups, protected each other. Taking care of our young became more important than hunting." The Nightfolk listened intently as the humans shared stories about Earth's history, about how humans had evolved from pursuit predators into builders and protectors. They were particularly amazed by tales of human parents staying awake at all hours to care for their babies, adapting their sleep cycles to ensure constant protection. "Your young ones sleep at night?" one of the Nightfolk asked, their fur showing patterns of disbelief. "But that is when we are most active, most alert. How do you protect them?" Tom smiled, pulling out his phone to show pictures of human nurseries, baby monitors, and night lights. "We adapted. We created tools, formed communities. Someone is always watching, always protecting, day or night." The revelation that humans had deliberately engineered their environment to protect their young during their rest cycle caused a ripple of color changes through the gathered Nightfolk. It challenged their fundamental understanding of what a day predator could be. As the station's day cycle began to shift towards night, the cubs started showing signs of their natural nocturnal rhythm. The humans watched in fascination as the young ones became more energetic while their own bodies told them it was time to rest. Before they left, Dawn approached them with an official request that would change everything. "We have been discussing," she said, her fur showing formal decision patterns. "We would like to learn more about human childcare methods. Perhaps there is much our species could teach each other." The request marked the beginning of a cultural exchange that would reshape both species' understanding of protection and care. The Nightfolk began to see that being a day predator didn't mean being a threat. It could mean being the perfect complement to their own protective instincts. The alarms blared through the station, their harsh sound cutting through both day and night cycle zones. Red emergency lights flashed in the corridors as crew members of both species rushed to their stations. A micrometeoroid storm had struck the outer hull of the station, causing multiple breaches in the protective shielding. Tom and his crew, who had stayed on as part of the cultural exchange program, were awakened during their rest cycle. The damage reports scrolling across their screens painted a grim picture. The station's outer hull had taken significant damage, and the protective radiation shielding was failing in several sections. The Nightfolk technical crews were the best at external repairs. Their natural night vision and ability to see in multiple light spectrums made them perfect for spacewalks. But the repairs would take hours, and they would need to work during their normal rest cycle, when the radiation from the nearby star was at its lowest. "We can't delay," Shade announced, his fur rippling with stress patterns. "If we don't fix the shielding before the next solar flare, we'll lose the whole station." He paused, looking at the gathering of worried Nightfolk parents. "But the cubs, they need constant supervision during our rest cycle. They're too young to adjust their sleep patterns." The nursery section housed 30 young cubs, all at the age when they were most active during the night cycle and needed deep rest during the day. Their normal caretakers would be essential for the repair work, their specialized skills irreplaceable. Anna stepped forward, her medical badge glinting in the emergency lights. "We can watch them. The human crew is already adapted to day cycles. We can keep them safe while you make the repairs." The Nightfolk parents' fur rippled with anxiety and uncertainty, despite weeks of cultural exchange. Trusting their cubs to day predators during their most vulnerable time went against every instinct they had. The cubs would be sleeping, defenseless, during the hours when their ancestors had most feared attack. Dawn, who had become the main bridge between the two species, looked at her own cub among the young ones. Her fur showed a complex pattern of fear and hope as she spoke. "The humans have proven themselves. Their protective instincts are strong, and they understand care. Perhaps this crisis is a test of our growing trust." The station shuddered as another, smaller impact struck the weakened hull. Time was running out. The Nightfolk engineers needed to begin their work immediately if they hoped to prevent catastrophic failure. "I'll stay with them too," said a young Nightfolk named Star, who had been learning human teaching methods. "I can help translate if the cubs wake up confused, but I'm not skilled enough for repair work." His fur showed determination despite his obvious exhaustion. The decision was made more from necessity than choice. The Nightfolk parents quickly organized their cubs in the main nursery chamber, a room that could be perfectly sealed and had its own backup life support systems. They nuzzled their young ones, their fur transmitting soothing patterns to help them settle into their day cycle sleep. Tom supervised as his crew converted the nursery for human comfort, setting up monitoring stations and emergency equipment. They installed extra backup power units for the environmental controls that kept the cubs at their optimal rest temperature. Before leaving for the repairs, Dawn approached Anna, her fur showing a complex mix of emotions. "Our ancestors," she said softly, "they used to tell stories of day predators who would steal cubs from their sleep nests. Now we're trusting you to guard our cubs' sleep. The universe has a strange sense of humor." As the Nightfolk repair crews suited up and headed out to face the damaged hull, the human team settled in for their watch. The nursery was dimly lit, filled with the soft sound of sleeping cubs and the gentle hum of environmental systems. Anna looked at the sleeping cubs, their fur occasionally flickering with dream patterns, and felt the weight of the trust placed in them. In the control room, Tom and Mike monitored the station's status while keeping a careful eye on the nursery sensors. They all understood that this crisis could either strengthen or shatter the growing bond between their species. Hours passed slowly in the dimly lit nursery as the human crew maintained their vigilant watch over the sleeping Nightfolk cubs. Anna moved quietly between the sleep pods, checking vital signs and adjusting temperature controls with practiced care. The soft blue glow from the monitoring screens cast gentle shadows across the room. One of the cubs stirred in its sleep, its fur flickering with distress patterns. Anna approached carefully, remembering her training about nightfolk sleep behaviors. She adjusted the pod's comfort settings and hummed a soft lullaby, something she used to do during her pediatric rotations back on Earth. The cub's fur gradually shifted back to peaceful sleep patterns. "You're good at this," Star whispered from his observation post. The young nightfolk had been fighting his natural sleep cycle to help translate, but exhaustion showed in his drooping ears and dull fur. "It's strange. In all our stories, day predators were mindless hunters. But you show such gentleness." Mike monitored the repair crew's progress from his station, occasionally providing updates through the comm system. The nightfolk engineers were making steady progress with the hull repairs, but they still had several hours of work ahead. Outside, the star's radiation continued to build toward another flare. A small group of cubs began to wake, their natural cycles disrupted by the earlier emergency and their parents' absence. Their fur showed confusion and anxiety as they opened their large eyes in the uncommon daylight hours. Star started to rise, but Anna gestured for him to rest. "Let me try," she said, approaching the wakeful cubs. She remembered Dawn's lessons about nightfolk cub communication and let her body language show calm and protection. The cubs watched her with a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty. Anna took out a small light-filtering screen from her medical kit and used it to create shadow puppets on the wall. The cubs' ears perked up with interest as she formed shapes that resembled their own species, telling simple stories through shadows. Their fur began to show patterns of delight and entertainment. Tom joined her, adding his own shadow creatures to the impromptu show. Soon, the awake cubs were fully engaged, their initial fear forgotten as they watched the humans transform shadows into familiar animals from both their worlds. One particularly bold cub even tried to make its own shadow shapes, fur glowing with joy when the humans praised its efforts. "Look at that," Star said, his own fur showing amazement. "They're not just tolerating you, they're playing with you." During day cycle, this has never happened before. The humans had brought some emergency rations, and when the cubs showed signs of hunger, Anna prepared small portions of their special food. She remembered the proper temperature and consistency from her cultural training, and the cubs eagerly accepted the meal from her hands, their fur showing trust patterns that made Star's eyes widen. "You know," Mike said during a quiet moment, "back on Earth, many human communities shared childcare duties. Different families would watch each other's kids. It didn't matter if they were related. Protecting young ones was just something everyone did." More cubs woke as the hours passed, but instead of the expected distress, they joined the quiet activities the humans had organized. Tom had discovered that the cubs were fascinated by his ability to wiggle his ears, a trick that had never impressed human children but seemed magical to the young nightfolk. Through the station's windows, they could see the repair crews moving carefully across the hull, their lights tiny beacons against the vast darkness. The cubs watched too, their fur showing pride patterns when they recognized their parents among the workers. Anna kept a careful medical log of each cub's vital signs and behaviors, noting how they were adapting to brief periods of day cycle wakefulness. The data would be valuable for both species' understanding of nightfolk development. But more importantly, each entry showed how the cubs were not just surviving under human care, they were thriving. As the day cycle progressed, even Star had to admit his surprise at how natural it all seemed. The human crew moved through their tasks with quiet efficiency, balancing professional care with genuine affection for their charges. The nursery had become a peaceful bubble in the midst of the station's crisis, proof that the old stories about day predators needed serious revision. The first warning came as a subtle vibration through the station's floor. Tom noticed it at his monitoring station, checking the sensors just as the proximity alarms began to flash. 3 ships had dropped out of faster-than-light travel, their designs a mess of mismatched parts, classic signs of space pirates. "Mike, seal the nursery doors," Tom ordered, his voice calm but firm. The pirates had chosen their timing well. Most of the nightfolk engineers were outside the station, focused on hull repairs. The station's day cycle security was minimal, as few threats ever came during the bright hours. Anna gathered the awake cubs into the most secure corner of the nursery, her medical training helping her keep them calm. The cubs' fur showed confusion, but they responded to her gentle guidance, huddling together quietly. Star, fighting his exhaustion, helped translate soft reassurances to the young ones. The pirates docked forcefully at one of the emergency airlocks. The station's sensors showed them cutting through the security protocols with practiced efficiency. They were after the station's valuable research data, but they wouldn't hesitate to take hostages, especially vulnerable young ones. "We have 6 minutes before they reach this section," Mike reported, his hands flying over the control panel as he rerouted power to strengthen the nursery's security doors. "The Nightfolk repair crews are too far out to help." Tom looked at the sleeping and awake cubs, remembering the trust their parents had placed in the human crew. His expression hardened with determination. "Then we make sure they never reach the nursery. Anna, you and Star stay with the cubs. Mike, with me." The two men quickly retrieved the emergency defense gear from their equipment lockers. They were cargo crew, but frontier routes required basic security training. As they checked their stun weapons, Tom activated the nursery's internal defense systems. The pirates, a mixed group of various species, moved through the station's corridors with practiced coordination. They expected minimal resistance during day cycle, knowing the Nightfolk would be sluggish and confused. What they didn't expect was to encounter alert, prepared, and very protective humans. Tom and Mike set up their defense at a corridor junction, using maintenance panels as cover. The pirates' first group rounded the corner confidently, only to be met with precisely aimed stun blasts. The attackers fell before they could radio a warning to their companions. In the nursery, Anna heard the sounds of struggle outside. She kept the cubs distracted with quiet games, but her body was tense, ready to defend her charges if needed. The cubs picked up on her protective stance, their fur showing patterns of trust mixed with concern. The second wave of pirates came more cautiously, using portable shields, but they didn't understand what they were truly facing. Humans protecting young ones. Tom and Mike worked with the coordination of experienced spacers, using their knowledge of the station's layout to outmaneuver the intruders. One pirate managed to reach the nursery's outer doors, starting to override the lock. Before he could finish, Mike tackled him with surprising speed. The pirate's weapons went flying as the human cargo officer demonstrated why Earth's higher gravity made its people naturally stronger than most space-stirring species. Through their comlinks, they could hear the Nightfolk repair crews rushing to return to the station. But Tom knew they had to hold out for at least another 10 minutes. He activated the corridor's emergency fire suppression system, filling the space with non-toxic but disorienting fog. The pirates' confidence crumbled as they faced resistance they hadn't planned for. Their sensors had shown only sleeping Nightfolk life signs. They hadn't accounted for the day-active humans. One after another, they fell to precisely aimed stun blasts or direct physical confrontation. When the Nightfolk security teams finally arrived, they found an unusual scene. The corridor outside the nursery was littered with unconscious pirates, the human crew standing guard with an intensity that made even veteran warriors pause. Inside, the cubs were safe and calm, some even sleeping through the entire incident. Dawn rushed to the nursery, her fur showing patterns of worry that quickly changed to amazement. Not only were all the cubs unharmed, but those who were awake seemed entirely unafraid. They were watching the door with interest, their fur displaying complete confidence in their human protectors. The old legends were wrong, Star said, his fur showing patterns of revelation. Day predators aren't mindless hunters. They're the most determined protectors I've ever seen. The young Nightfolk looked at the human crew with new understanding. You weren't just watching our cubs. You were ready to fight for them. News of the pirate attack spread quickly through Nightfolk space. The station's communication feeds were filled with recordings of the incident, showing the human crew's fierce defense of the nursery. But what caught most attention wasn't the fighting. It was the footage from inside the nursery itself. The security cameras had captured Anna keeping the cubs calm during the crisis, reading their fur patterns and responding with perfect caregiver instincts. The sight of sleeping cubs peacefully undisturbed while day predators fought to protect them challenged everything the night folk thought they knew about the natural order. 2 weeks after the attack, the station hosted representatives from 12 different night folk colonies. They came to see for themselves what their people were calling the day miracle. The human crew found themselves the center of unprecedented attention. "Show them how you do the shadow games," one of the cubs called out to Tom during a demonstration. The little one's fur glowed with excitement as the human created familiar shapes on the wall. The visiting representatives watched in amazement as other cubs crowded around, completely at ease with their former evolutionary enemy. Dawn had prepared a formal presentation about the cultural exchange program. She showed data about how the cubs' development had actually improved with the addition of human caregivers. Their stress patterns were lower, their social interactions more diverse, and their adaptation skills stronger. "The day predator instinct," she explained, her fur showing professional pride, "which we feared for so long, has proven to be an asset. Humans don't just hunt during day cycles. They guard, they nurture, they protect. Their constant vigilance complements our natural patterns perfectly." The station's nursery had been modified to include human comfort stations, allowing the crew to maintain their watch without disrupting their own needs. The visiting officials observed as humans and night folk smoothly exchanged duties during cycle transitions, creating a continuous circle of care for the young ones. Anna had started teaching other human caregivers who arrived at the station. She showed them how to read the cubs' fur patterns, understand their sleep cycles, and provide the right kind of stimulation during their brief day-active periods. The night folk watched these lessons with growing appreciation for the humans' dedication to proper care. Word spread beyond the night folk to other nocturnal species. Representatives from the shadow dancers and the dusk tribes came to observe. They too had evolved avoiding day predators, but the success of the human-night folk partnership made them reconsider their ancient fears. One of the shadow dancers, watching Tom play with a group of cubs, turned to Dawn with glowing tendrils that indicated deep thought. "Your cubs trust them completely," she observed. "Even with their clawless hands and flat teeth, they make us feel safe. How did we miss this for so long?" The station began offering official cross-species childcare courses. Humans learned about nocturnal young ones' needs, while night folk learned about human protection strategies. Together, they created new protocols that combined the best of both species' parenting instincts. Star, who had stayed awake during the pirate attack, became an instructor in these courses. "Look at their eyes," he would tell his students, pointing out the way human pupils dilated when they watched the cubs. "That's not a predator's hunting gaze. It's a protector's attention. They're always watching, always aware, just like we are during night cycle." The success led to the first official human nightfolk child care center. The facility was designed to take advantage of both species' strengths, with seamless shift changes that ensured the cubs always had alert, caring guardians. Other stations began requesting similar programs, and soon the idea spread across the sector. Even the most traditional nightfolk communities couldn't deny the evidence. Videos showed cubs learning to be comfortable in both day and night cycles, developing confidence that their ancestors could never have imagined. The old stories of fearsome day predators were being rewritten into tales of dedicated guardians. As the representatives prepared to return to their colonies, they watched one final scene that seemed to sum up everything. A small group of cubs had fallen asleep during playtime, tired from their excitement. Instead of waking them to return to their pods, Anna simply sat with them, keeping watch while their fur flickered with happy dreams. It was the most natural thing in the world. A day predator using their vigilance not to hunt, but to protect. 5 years had passed since the first human crew discovered the derelict nightfolk ship. The small station where it all began had grown into the Galactic Center for cross-species care, its corridors filled with the sounds of young ones from dozens of different worlds. The term day predator had transformed from a warning into a mark of pride among human caregivers. Tom stood at the observation window of the new main nursery, watching the carefully orchestrated shift change. Human caregivers in soft blue uniforms exchanged updates with their nightfolk counterparts, their movements practiced and smooth. In the play area, cubs from 3 different nocturnal species romped together under the watchful eyes of both day and night shift staff. Anna, now the center's head of medical training, was teaching a class of new human recruits. Every species has its own sleep cycle, she explained, demonstrating the proper way to check a sleeping cub's fur patterns. Our ability to adapt our schedules, to be alert when others rest, makes us uniquely suited for this work. The center had become famous for its innovative approach to childcare. The original station's design had been replicated across the galaxy, with special facilities that could simulate any species' natural cycle while accommodating their caregivers' needs. The sight of humans watching over sleeping alien young ones had become common enough that few even remarked on it anymore. Mike, who had retired from cargo hauling to become a full-time instructor, was showing a group of visitors the security systems he had helped design. "The pirates did us a favor," he often joked. "They proved the humans don't just care for the cubs. We'll fight for them too." The center's research division, led by Dawn and a team of human scientists, had made groundbreaking discoveries about cross-species development. Cubs raised with both human and nightfolk caregivers showed remarkable adaptability, better stress management, and advanced social skills. The success led to the establishment of the first Galactic Child Protection Protocol. One of the most popular areas in the center was the mixed cycle playroom, where cubs could safely experience both day and night environments. Under careful supervision, they learned to be comfortable in any lighting condition. The room's success had inspired similar programs across the galaxy, breaking down ancient barriers between day and night species. Star, now a full liaison officer, gave regular tours to visiting officials. "Look there," he would say, pointing to the nursery's quiet corner. "Those sleeping cubs are from 5 different worlds. Their ancestors would have never trusted each other, let alone slept peacefully together. And there, watching over them all, stands a human, a day predator turned guardian." The center had also become a haven for orphaned or displaced young ones. When a mining colony suffered a catastrophic accident, it was the human caregivers who volunteered to work double shifts, ensuring the rescued cubs never felt alone or afraid. Their dedication during that crisis became legendary among spacefaring species. The original crew's story had become required reading in xenobiology classes. Students learned how a simple cargo run had changed the galaxy's understanding of human nature. The lesson wasn't just about overcoming prejudice. It was about recognizing that ancient fears could blind species to valuable allies. In the center's main hall, a mural depicted that first encounter. The human crew discovering the sleeping cubs, the terrified reaction of the nightfolk, and the gradual building of trust. Beneath it, in multiple languages, was inscribed, "Protection knows no cycle." As the day shift began, Tom watched a new group of human recruits arrive for training. They came from all walks of life: former soldiers, teachers, medical workers, space crew, all drawn by the chance to use their day predator instincts for something meaningful. Each wore the center symbol, a rising sun cradling a sleeping cub. The legacy of those first few weeks had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Humans had found a unique role in the galactic community, not as conquerors or mere traders, but as trusted guardians of the future. Their very nature, once feared, had become their greatest gift to the stars. In the nursery, a small nightfolk cub stirred in its sleep. The human caregiver on duty moved instantly to check on it, her movements gentle but sure. The cub's fur flickered with peaceful patterns as it settled back to rest, completely secure in the knowledge that its day predator guardian was watching over it. It was a small moment, repeated countless times across the galaxy, but it represented everything they had achieved. The perfect balance of day and night, protection and trust, old fears, and new understanding.